This week in the enterprise news, F-Secure is launching a protection and response service to protect remote workers. Sectigo and Infineon integrate advanced IoT security with automated certificate provisioning, enhance continuous threat detection, and secure remote access with the Clarity platform, and some acquisition and funding updates from SafeBreach, Swimlane, and Syncurity. In our second segment, we welcome Mark Orsi, the president of the Global Resilience Federation, to talk about the business impacts and security risks when working from home. In our final segment, Peter Warmka, the founder of the Counterintelligence Institute, to discuss the threat of social engineering goes well beyond phishing. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The Viavi Solutions Observer Platform provides SecOps teams a powerful combination of comprehensive data for threat hunting and incident response that includes wire data analytics and enriched flow records. Using pure, unaltered packet and net flow, Observer presents views across the entire IT infrastructure with threat alert features including scope, impact, and advanced traffic profiling. Teams can use automated workflows to dive into high-fidelity network evidence and more quickly resolve issues, minimizing impact on customers, users, and business operations. Learn more about the Viavi Network Security Solution and download free resources at securityweekly.com/Viavi. That's V-I-A-V-I. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Welcome everyone to Enterprise Security Weekly. It's episode 180 for April 22nd, 2020. I'm all messed up because I don't have my mouse. The battery died and I forgot to charge it. So I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. My mouse is wired. I'm all good.
I know. It's a long, you know what? It's a long, I got this fancy Lenovo like yoga mouse thing, which is really awesome, except it doesn't take a battery. You have to charge it. And I'm like, oh, that'll be all right. No, it's clearly not.
you just need to set your charger over there beside the machine.
Like
so
one more thing to charge, right? Like how many things do we have to charge? So join us at InfoSec World, June 22nd through the 24th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. Word is all systems go for this conference. So our listeners get 15% off the InfoSec World main conference pass or world pass. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2020. Check out our interview with Summer Fowler on Business Security Weekly this week, where we talked in depth about that conference. We are looking for high-quality guest suggestions for our Enterprise Security Weekly podcast to fill upcoming recording schedules. If you know someone on a blue team or work on a blue team, you're doing cool and interesting stuff, or just want to talk about a topic, and I have one that I'll talk about at the top of this segment as well, you can go to securityweekly.com/guests and submit your suggestions. And if you're submitting for someone else, totally fine. Just make sure you get their permission or tell them or give them a heads up, because if we like the guest, we'll contact them, and sometimes contact them out of the blue. They're like, who are you? What are you doing? And we're like, well, someone recommended you on the show. So let's see the news. My oldest son, it's a great challenge, right? If you've got a Windows PC that you deploy in your enterprise and you think it's safe, I will deploy my son to that machine remotely, virtually, right? And I guarantee you he will get it infected in a certain amount of time, or at least put your defenses to the test. He certainly did that. Well, I didn't put many defenses in my home PC, my new gaming PC. And so it got infected with something pretty good. And I didn't bother with forensics because I was like, I'm just wiping it clean and rebuilding. But it begged the question. I asked this question of John Strand, who I wish was here too. We miss you, John. In John's like app locker is what to do. Because I'm like, look, the first challenge I have is, number one, I don't have a domain. So like group policy is not in play right now. And I mean, I could probably get it in a domain or, something of that nature. But there's a big difference between local security policies and Active Directory domain security policies. So that's a limiting factor. I did try and configure App Locker, and I configured rules, but with not much success. They weren't really working, so I have to do more reading. Admittedly, I didn't spend a lot of time on it and read the documentation. So since we're looking for guests, if you have suggestions about this, maybe that's a segment in the making. How would you prevent a home PC like this or a Windows box from becoming compromised if it's outside a domain, right? Especially makes it challenging. So what's your tool of choice? What's your configuration option of choice? AppLocker does look really cool. If you can limit folks to running applications from certain directories, that's really cool. I just got to work with the config a little more, but AppLocker is a Microsoft free thing. It comes like basically built into Windows 10 in the local security policy settings. So I thought it was really interesting and somewhat pertinent to this show, certainly, as most of our audience is responsible, many of us, for defending Windows systems, which is interesting. So
you have one article in here that might help. I mean, this F-Secure article, it's more of a managed detection response tool. I'm curious how much preventative lockdown capabilities it actually has. Right. But they just released this new rapid version of their tool for remote workers. Wonder if it solves some of your problems or not.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to what basic controls do you want to put in place, right? Admin versus not admin. Do you want to whitelist software or lock down certain applications is one thing. Do you want to run software in containers is another strategy. And by containers, I don't mean Docker containers. I mean the container technology inside of Windows. Windows natively will run, and I configured this, but I wasn't quite sure. I have to read about what to do next. You have to purposely enable the containerization of the Edge browser and actually run that inside of a container, a protected container. And then you get to pick what can come out of that container. Like if you download a file, does that file get to go on the host, basically the host operating system, if you will, or does it have to stay within that protected container, right? And there's various options for that and warnings like, hey, if you let people download files and then you let them save them, you're still going to get infected, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just also.
Do I have to use Edge, really?
In this case, as far as I know, now there are third-party vendors that do offer the ability to containerize all applications, right? Any application. In Windows, and I was talking with Matthew Miller about this, and I don't think this is like his thing. He just knows of it, and we're working to get him on the show. He works at Microsoft. This particular feature was specific to Edge. So I wish Microsoft would just go ahead and make it available to all applications. And again, this goes back to our conversation. Microsoft playing in the security space is a strong player. However, as I've found out firsthand, the research and knowledge you have to acquire to use what they have, it requires research. Which, I mean, this isn't a bad thing, but if they led you down this journey in a more structured fashion, right, and had some formalities around it, rather than require like you going out and researching and reading and figuring out what the next step is, I think they could make it easier for you to learn, I guess is my point. Maybe. So, in any case.
Or create some base default policies or something that make it a little easier.
I think that's why for SMBs and smaller enterprises, the things like the F-Secure and a lot of the MSPs, having their offering is probably not a bad idea for many organizations. Now, what level of protection they give you is really the mystery there, and the important thing in my mind, right? Are they actually going to protect you from threats, and how many of those threats, and how advanced can those threats get before they just fly under the radar, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's my concern for any Windows, PC, protecting against malware. What level do we go through, right? I mean, I'd love the protections that the advanced organizations that we talk about They're getting the advanced pen tests from our friends, right? I love that level, but that takes a team and a lot of monitoring, right? And there's really, in my mind today, Matt, no substitute for that. I don't think you can hire it like an MSP or acquire endpoint security software that gives you the level that, you know, a well-structured team gives you.
Yeah.
Similar to our discussion last Thursday. Were you on for that?
No,
I don't think you weren't on that.
Not.
We were talking about that last Thursday on Paul's Security Weekly.
Got it.
So what else we got in the news?
Well, breaking news, AWS came out and canceled AWS Reinforce, which was scheduled June 29th, July 1st in Houston, Texas. Literally, the news hit like 40 minutes ago.
And that's a shame. That's their security event.
Yeah, it is. They had it in Boston last year. It was scheduled to be in Houston this year. I think just because nobody knows state by state how this stuff's going to happen and what size limitations people are going to have, they just canceled the whole event. So, you know, obviously this audience,
what does it mean for Black Hat, right?
I mean, that's the next one in line right after this from a date perspective.
I have no official or even unofficial really information about Black Hat.
Nope.
I mean, they're all
assume it's
they're all rumors.
It's far enough out. But
people are assuming it's far enough out. There are some other rumors that it's going to be canceled. There's other rumors it's going to be virtual, but I mean, those are so unsubstantiated right now that, I mean, it could just be chatter at this point, just to put that out there. So, like, really, I don't even have any reliable information to share with the audience on Black Hat and DEF CON.
Oh, some funding announcements. Oh, and some acquisition announcements in here. I thought.
Oh yeah, JP Bourget. Do you know JP?
Bourget.
You must have met him at DerbyCons in the past. I want to say he's like pop by our table. You probably met him. He goes to a lot of the. He's a great guy. His company, what is the one that got Swimlane? Syncurity was his company, and I had heard that he was doing really cool stuff in terms of security orchestration and automation, and he must have been, because Swimlane liked it enough that they just acquired JP's company. So congrats to JP. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, we know a lot of people on that advisory board and in that company. It was interesting. Plus, you know, we've had Cody on this show before. Swimlane's up north here in Colorado, headquartered. So I think this is interesting, right? You're taking some security operations, incident handling capabilities, tying that with security orchestration and automation platform. You're starting to bring more of these capabilities together. And look, Swimlane's one of the last independent SOARs left. There's only a couple of them out there. Swimlane and I think Simplifies the other one that are kind of independent. Everybody else has kind of been bought
acquired.
Up.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. This one's up your alley. Sectigo and Infineon integrate advanced. I'm sorry. I thought this was an identity one. Was there an identity one?
Well, this is certificates. Yeah, so this one's interesting. It's with IoT, so it kind of crosses over into some of your domain here. And it looks like they're including a chip in the IoT device to handle some of the authentication and secure communications for IoT devices. So it looks like they're embedding a chip in these devices to handle some of that certificate management.
We did this an interview with, I don't remember her name. She was really awesome and super smart. She came on Paul's Security Weekly from Sectigo.
Got it.
Yeah. And this is exactly what they do. And this is exactly how you want to solve this problem, quite frankly. So I'm glad to see that they're making partnerships. That's pretty much where we kind of left off was, I think this is awesome and people should be using it. And, you know, let's try and get it pushed out there. So forming these partnerships gets this level of protection into these devices. It makes it super difficult for attackers. Not impossible, but certainly, I would never say impossible, right? But certainly super difficult to do some of these basic attacks, like forge the firmware updates. And there's a lot of pieces and components to that, right? But being able to poison firmware, change the signature of it, and still have it be installed on the device is certainly something, an attack that's happening today. I think a very scary and dangerous attack. This particular technology that uses TPM based on the hardware And there are other options too. You can do it in software. She did say there were software options, but the hardware is obviously better. And if you can do this in hardware, I mean, it just makes it so difficult for an attacker to poison the firmware. Certainly, there's other attacks, right? But the authentication to the devices and the validation that the software that it's running is actually the software it should be running and hasn't been tampered with, I think is super important for IoT devices, especially in industrial control systems. There's an article about Clarity making some announcements as well. I mean, this is super important.
Yeah.
No, I thought... Anyway.
No, it was a yeah. I remember the segment, but I think now I think the partnership's great. Now they got to get manufacturers to adopt it and start to put it in, right? And so what'll get interesting is how many of these IoT device manufacturers leverage this technology to actually protect. We know that the UK put out some guidelines around commercial IoT devices earlier this year, mandating certain things. This is kind of along those lines of, if you get some government agency saying, look, you've got to change default passwords and the way authentication happens, and this becomes a natural progression of how this should happen, and you get manufacturers to adopt it, this is fantastic. That's the next hurdle is adoption.
There was DefenseCode. Have you heard of DefenseCode before?
No, I have not. Static analysis tool, had not heard of it. Their product name's pretty interesting, ThunderScan. I thought that was pretty interesting. But no, I had not heard of this one. It sounds like
what we used to call software like 20, 30 years ago usually carried this type of moniker. I think Tenable has a long history of lightning and thunder, right? They had those named products. I think we still kind of poke fun at Ron for that today, right? Because those were renamed. But I don't know. I just added in there because it was an announcement from a security company, and there wasn't very many this week. I have not heard of DefenseCode. They do have a SAST scanner, which looks more like a traditional and somewhat older approach when you look at some of the screenshots, right? Doing that kind of scanning. The SAST technology I was impressed with, albeit it's a sponsor, so I want to put that out there. Synopsys has some really cool technology. Now, also other caveat with that is they integrate with the IDE that I use from JetBrains, right? I use the JetBrains PyCharm, PHP Storm, IDEA. What is the one? IntelliJ? IntelliJ is their Java one. That's the most popular one. But they all look and feel the same, right? They're just supporting different languages. Synopsys has plugins to their SAST platform into that IDE platform. And when I saw the demo of that, I was just like, wow, I want that. That's really awesome. Because you didn't have to scan. Like basically as you worked with your code, and not just your code, but also the pieces that fit into your environment. So it did SCA and SAST all in one. So if you were including an older library or framework, it would tell you that along with things inside of your code. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the integration into the IDE is where you get it in front of the developers right away versus sending it off to get a static scan, and then it comes back to the developer when the test fails. That integration right into the IDE just makes it a lot easier for the developers as they're coding to know that there's issues there.
Arcsan Technologies, and it looks like a couple of other firms, Matt, were merged into one. Yeah,
it's 3 companies. It's Arcsan, it's CollabNet version 1 and Zevia Labs all combined to create digital.ai. Now, I think we did a briefing with Arcsan, I think 2 Black Hats ago.
Yep. I've done a couple we've done a couple. Basically, the way I understand Arcsan is if I've got code running on a device somewhere where an attacker may pick it up physically or have physical access to it in an automobile, for example, and I want it to be resilient and secure, that's the company that helps me with that, right?
Right. And so they're taking that technology, integrating that in with Zevia Labs, which is really kind of a DevOps tool chain, CI/CD pipeline kind of company, right? So now what you're seeing here is from the integration of these 3 companies, you're kind of going down this path of like DevSecOps, right? They're trying to take ZB Labs and their DevOps tool chain, integrate some application security capabilities in there, and bring it all together in one platform. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because we know that all those pieces are valuable. What we've seen is, most organizations kind of adopt best of breed and kind of integrate them together. Here, I think these three companies, as part of Digital.ai, are trying to integrate all this into one. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Oh, and there was, I like these summary articles from HelpNet Security, because I didn't necessarily see all of these announcements, Matt. I know we covered the NuVector one, right?
Yeah, we covered NuVector, and we covered ZeroFOX. We did not, and we covered Sentinel
1. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think we covered those. Yeah, so it's the other two.
It was Corsa Security Orchestrator, an intelligent orchestration and management of virtual next generation firewall arrays. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Sounds like a two-fin kind of product, right?
Yep. Yeah. A single pane of glass view is the way they describe it.
Yeah, there's a term, blast from the past.
A lot of marketing terminology in there.
Oh, yeah.
An Entrust data card unveils a single portal to discover, control, and automate certificate management. So this is like a DigiTrust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Entrust data card does so much on both hardware and software certificate management. Bringing it all together into a single portal makes a ton of sense for them, because they have so many technologies embedded under the two companies that merged years ago.
Gotcha. Cool.
We had Clarity on there too.
Oh yeah,
did you talk briefly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, right? This is obviously, the industrial control system is a hot space. When I look at this announcement, it gets a little interesting, because I'm thinking, okay, IT, OT. I look at Tenable's acquisition last year, where they're doing some of the same thing. A catch up in integrating both some of the IT and OT capabilities together more in a single solution to compete with Tenable and the acquisition on the OT side. I'm not quite sure. I mean, it sounds interesting, but then you start getting into traditional vulnerability management overlap space here a little bit. So I'm curious how differentiated the overall solution really is. I couldn't tell from the article, and it's a long article.
Gotcha. Well, that will conclude the enterprise security news for today. Stay tuned. Interviews coming up next.